You know the phrase, history is doomed to repeat itself if humanity doesn't learn from it. Well, when looking at the major factions in a game like New Vegas, this rings ironically true. Whether it be the NCR clinging on to their best recollection of democracy and order, trying to restore the wasteland to a pre-war version of America, or the Brotherhood of Steel's approach of a hierarchical technocracy that strives to control remnants of technology they believe could cause a second apocalypse. There's even the boomers and their hermit-esque denialism of the outside world, but it's my opinion that none of them are more blatant and obvious about their inspirations from the past than Caesar's Legion, whom by all accounts seem to be dead set on repeating arguably the worst ideologies in humanity's complicated past, and doing it all in football gear, wielding machetes, by force, all because a sadistic, nerdy psychopath read one too many books about the rise and fall of ancient Rome and decided that his vision for an ideal wasteland was ancient Roman society without any of the society that surrounded ancient Rome and its conquest. So instead, we ended up with a totalitarian slave camp that takes live-action roleplay a little too seriously, built through conquest, where autonomy, freedom, ideals, and ambitions would all be replaced with reverence and servitude for one man, himself, Caesar. There are no opinions but the right opinion, and the right opinion is Caesar's. There's no ambition but to serve Caesar. There is no will but the will of Caesar, and all those who oppose him, even many who bow to him, will be killed, enslaved, crucified. And it will all be right, because Caesar always knows what's right. Does that sound a little familiar to you? Now, that's a great segue into our next section, Devil's Advocate. There's a case to be made that in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, like Fallout, good and evil have all become extremely subjective. Everybody has reverted to a state of survival where morality comes second. In a world that is completely destroyed and clinging to the idea of rebuilding society, brutal tribes that reward ferocity and mercilessness are bound to rise. And this can be seen in other Fallout games, even in New Vegas, not just with the Legion. There are camps of slavers trading in human beings all over the place. Aside from Caesar's Legion, there's gangs and there's highwaymen lurking around every corner. Chem addiction runs rampant, and odd ideologies and cults are popping up all over the wasteland. I mean, before you're even able to enter the New Vegas Strip, you have to go through Freeside and interact with like 3 different criminals trying to mug you and kill you just before you're able to enter the Strip. These things exist. However, all of these dark realities are contrasted by the inherent goods that you stumble across in the wasteland. And whether that be in the form of Goodspring and its citizens, who they literally pull you from an early grave, and they treat your wounds with no expectation of anything in return. Or there's the friendly ghoul Raoul, whose loyalty led him to protect his family at any cost, and he single-handedly took down one of the biggest gangs in Mexico. He tells you all of this in-game if you just talk to him. Or there's the beacon of light in a dark world that is the followers of the apocalypse, and their mission is to help those in need, even in a world where everybody is in need. And ironically enough, they took in and helped Caesar in his time of need when he was very young, welcoming him into their tribe and educating him. It was actually here where he learned of Rome and its escapades at a young age.
That son of a bitch pulled a fast one.
But the followers' intentions were pure, and the followers, as well as the other aforementioned individuals, are all beautiful contrasting elements in the harsh environment that is the Fallout universe. In a universe where there's ever contrasting extreme evils and extreme goods, why is the Legion work? So that brings us into our section that I like to call Rise. Much like the Roman Empire had a rise and a fall, I believe the Legion will as well. The thing is, history shows that merciless conquest does work. The Mongols used plague-infested corpses as biological warfare in the siege of Kaffa, catapulting them over city walls, and they survived for over 160 years as an empire. The Roman Empire started out as a small hilltop village, and it expanded to a roaring nation that spanned across most of Europe through tactics of domination, conquest, assimilation. They were noted for practicing some of the most barbaric and unusual punishments to attain and maintain such control. For example, they used the Roman candle, which was described by Tacitus, where you would be nailed to a cross, upside down, coated in wax, oil, and pit, and then you'd have a fire started at your feet to be used as a form of illumination, often at gatherings for the rich or have you. But do you remember that thing I said about the Legion trying to present itself as ancient Rome without any of the society surrounding what made it so good? Well, despite the brutal war campaigns and punishments, ancient Rome was also one of the most progressive and technologically advanced nations of its time period. It's responsible for innovations that were used for thousands of years to come, such as the clay oil lantern. Even a lot of philosophical schools of thoughts stem from ancient Roman society. Arts, social understandings, it all comes from the Roman Empire and what revolutionized humanity and made it so great. Whereas the Legion, they're nothing more than a warlord slaver using a facade of elegance and divine understanding of what the wasteland needs to justify his own personal bloodthirst. Caesar rules with an air of confidence that's ever lacking in Fallout's universe, and the way he operates through using slaves to breed and mass produce his army, he has created a perfect echo chamber to rule without contest, without question. His soldiers are born into combat and subservience. They've never been exposed to alternating perceptives of worldviews, or every perspective they have has been fed to them since birth by Caesar and his legionaries. And by the time they're going out into the world, it's been so deeply ingrained into them that outsiders are profligates, deserving of death, and Caesar is the only solution to the state of the wasteland, almost so deeply ingrained that it ensures complete loyalty. Paired with a no-surrender policy, defectors will never exist, nor will prisoners of war, because they will succumb to their injuries before they ever listen to what a profligate degenerate has to say. There is no choice in the Legion, but there is an inhuman level of loyalty to the leader, and because he alone controls everything, it creates a cutthroat tribe of legionnaires trying to appease a warlord in hockey pads so that they themselves can possess some semblance of power over other brainwashed legionaries. So the rise, why it's working, brainwashing mostly, but also because violent conquest does work to an extent, but it doesn't have a lot of longevity. Now, this acts as a perfect segue into our next section, our next two sections. Why isn't it working? And then we'll go into longevity, or what I like to call the fall, just like the fall of Rome. So why isn't it working? It's because human beings are a resource in any society. So because of Caesar's strict no-surrender policy, his denialism of modern medicines, because of his stance on chems even as simple as the Stimpeg, which is your main healing item in-game, and he reserves firearms only for the highest-ranking legionaries. In doing all of these things, he's instilling these soldiers to be cannon fodder, at a rate which he can't really replace through conquest alone. The vast majority of Legion soldiers, as we spoke about, are slaves that were born, and they're all of tribal descent from conquest. The women of conquered tribes are enslaved and used to birth more soldiers, and these soldiers, slave soldiers, are born and die legionaries. This is because that can only be attained through conquest. And while they have a country to the east, we never actually see the condition of their main territory or its citizens. What is made clear in the Mojave is that the general public is not quick to bow. They're not quick to set aside their ideologies and their way of life and bow to a dictator. They will be met with force wherever they go, and while brutality and sadism has gotten them so far, it's also almost certain to be their demise. People are not so easily pacified and then re-radicalized for another cause. Even the brainwashed legionaries born into slavery are each still their own individual with their own ideals and their own opinions, and they'll keep them forever repressed and hidden out of fear of crucifixion. But the Legion can conquer through fear and rule with an iron fist, but there's no longevity in these forms of leadership. It's great for a blitzkrieg of just capturing territory after territory, but when it comes to actually settling down and forming a society and a framework of a society that works and serves its citizens well as gets served by its citizens well, I don't think it will ever actually work. So let's talk about the longevity, or what I call the fall. Because they rely on slavery for their armies, they're vastly outnumbered by their adversary, the NCR. They're technologically inferior to the NCR and most other major and minor factions in the Mojave, and they'll never garner the support of the people. They'll only ever be able to demand it at the tip of a spear. This is not to say that they'll be unsuccessful in conquest, as is displayed in New Vegas. The Blitzkrieg approach does work, but they only work to claim, not to develop. Should the Legion capture the Hoover Dam and control the electricity being produced there, they'll have nothing to do with it. Should they proceed farther into the Mojave, they'll be met with resistance the entire way, and upon reaching the New Vegas Strip, they'd almost certainly be completely peppered by the seemingly endless army of Mr. House's Securitrons, which is why you, the courier, need to stop his Securitrons if you side with the Legion. They recognize his threat. Should they decide to push farther into actual NCR territory and try to continue that expansion, they'll be absolutely snuffed out. The NCR has an entire country to the west that is much better developed than anything the Legion could do because they don't believe in technology or modern medicine. The only reason they appear so menacing in the story of New Vegas is because the Mojave is a contested land with multiple major players, one of which being the Legion. And in comparison, they are menacing. Because of the strategies they employ and the style of leadership that they fall under, they are menacing. But the NCR, the Brotherhood of Steel, and Mr. House all have skin in the game, and these are only the major players. These are only the major players. And while the Legion may be capable of winning the battle for Hoover Dam, they would not realistically win the war. Their aspirations and their ambitions to move farther west into true NCR territory will quickly be put to rest when they're met with the realities of what that entails. Mr. House has chips in every game. The Brotherhood of Steel's technology would shake the average legionary to their core, and the NCR is more than capable of strategically retreating, returning in force, and absolutely shaking Caesar's hold on the land because they don't have a no-surrender policy. They'll strategically retreat, better equip themselves, and return at a time that makes more sense. See, the Legion tries to present itself as the Roman Empire reborn, but in reality, they're essentially the Great Khans if they liked crucifixion and slavery and LARP attire instead of chems and leather jackets. Even the most uncivilized tribes look like beacons of humanity next to the Legion. So, what's my closing opinion on the Legion? If it isn't already a little obvious, my overall opinion is that even from the perspective of an evil playthrough, they're an unappealing faction. The NCR is such a satisfying faction because they're relatable to most gamers. From their structure to their flaws, they're reminiscent of our understanding of a working society. I mean, half of their internal conflict is from taxes. If that doesn't ring true, I don't know what does. The Brotherhood of Steel, while having a pretty questionable means to their end and a hardcore policy on all mutations that is also a little reminiscent of dark times from human history, at the very least, in-game, they offer an amazing power fantasy. They operate more like a meritocracy in terms of their caste system, they let you move up, and they have an overall noble goal with what they see as good intentions. But the Legion, it's not even offering a power fantasy of most evil playthroughs in video games. You aren't working for an overall personal goal. You're not fighting for some misunderstood greater good. You're not even working towards your own conquest and domination because everything that you do for Caesar. No matter how useful you are, he only offers servitude. You are, and you always will be, a tool to one man who bans all modern medicine, forces slaves to fight to the death for his amusement, and doesn't even have electricity in the only part of America that was completely untouched by nuclear fallout. It doesn't even make sense. How could I make sense when I got millions on my mind? So, what is the answer to apocalyptic society? I don't know, but I know it isn't the Legion. And to be fair, we struggle with conflict resolution even right now today in our modern and progressive societies. So, we can at the very least confer that where powers and civilizations rise, so will conflict. The issue is, if our only response to any conflict or disagreements is domination, violence, sadism, conquest, then every single conflict we ever have as a society will lead to war. And if Fallout has taught us anything throughout all of their games with their universe, it's that war, well,
War never changes.
So that's my surface level analysis of Caesar's Legion from Fallout New Vegas. If you want to see more videos like this, or you want to see me talk about any other faction from any video game, leave a comment below. I'll play the game, form my own opinions, and make a video with a surface level analysis. I'm not always going to go deeply into lore as I didn't here, but in the future, if we want lore videos, just throw a recommendation in the comment section and we'll see what happens. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see gameplay, more analysis like this, and just follow me around, hear some of my opinions. It's great talking to all of you, and I hope to see you all in the future. Thank you so much for the support.